Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim, and welcome to Tim Talks, the show that's only partially a show, but really is just an excuse for me to talk to my very talented friends. And speaking of talented friends, I have another one here with me today. She's the lead 2D animator over at Rooster Teeth Animations. Say hello to Yssa, everyone. Hi. Hey, Yssa, how you doing?
Hi, I am okay.
So for those like me who may not know how to pronounce your last name, say it for us.
My name is Yssa Badiola.
Badiola. Okay, that's what I thought. I just didn't want to go ahead and get that out. I could have asked that in the pre-interview, but honestly, it's more fun to just see it live happen in person. And so for those who may be unfamiliar with you or who you are, what all the stuff that you do over at RT, give us sort of a Reader's Digest version, a short breakdown of what you do over there.
So I am lead animator for the 2D department at Rooster Teeth Animation. I basically oversee a lot of animation styles, oversee the basic main production of animation for whatever show production that we're working on, and I work together closely with our director and our producer to make sure that basically the show gets shipped out in the quality that we want it to.
Absolutely. And I know that among animation especially, quality is something that is driven harder than I mean, even the actual schedule that you keep up to. You guys have such a high level of expectation for yourselves.
Yeah.
That it reflects in the work, and it reflects in the way that you guys take what other people say, you know? How has feedback kind of influenced the quality that you guys put out?
Oh, that's interesting. The 2D department in general is actually, like a lot smaller than 3D, especially at this point, because 3D has really expanded, and 2D ever since the first season of Camp has stayed basically the same. However, the
how many people is it in 2D roughly?
So main production for animation is, I think, just around 10. But, that doesn't include people from pre-production, which is boards and, the main art department, and then post, which is sound and like editing and everything all across the board. So that, like I said, that doesn't include them. But if it does, I think we're basically less than 20 people. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, just again, to go back to that quality standard that you guys are able to pump out in such a small group. I mean, it is astounding, really. I hope I'm not blowing smoke up your skirt when I say that, because 2D animation to me has always been my favorite part of RT. Like, once X-Ray and Vav started coming out, and then X-Ray and Vav 2, and then we have Camp and all the stuff that we'll kind of touch on in the more minutia as we go through. I mean, it was amazing to see the seeds of that sort of really grow into its own thing, starting with Jordan and the RTAAs.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was really where that all got its start.
Yeah, the fact that it was just from one person, and then now we're at this point, and the team does such a good job. Like, to be frank, like, all the positive feedback really just, it feels like that's the payoff. Almost. The payoff, and also just like, oh man, it's so amazing to know that everyone likes what we're doing, and the animators themselves and everyone who's working on the productions, like, they really try their best to know that, like, oh, they got to work really hard, and not just hard but also really smart, and make sure that the work that we're producing is up to the standard that we want.
Yeah. And so, kind of rewinding just a little bit, let's talk about how you got there, because that is a very high position. You're the lead of the 2D animation department. That is amazing.
Thank you.
But you did not start at the middling to top. Let's start all the way back with, how did you get involved with doing animation? Were you just a drawer, or did you kind of always love moving pictures?
So I've been drawing since a young age. I was always the artist of the family out of like 3 kids,
There's always one.
And the other's always the almost problem child.
Right.
And so
were the youngest, oldest,
I am
middle?
the youngest, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really easy.
It's okay. No, you have that I'm the cutest attitude of the youngest. And I mean, yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
So I mean, just you know, family psychology kind of a thing. My brother is the engineer. My sister is in med school, so I kind of fit into this nice hole where it's like, all right, well, I can be this person.
So basically, Thanksgiving's really fun, is what you're saying.
Surprisingly. But so
I'd imagine now it's a little bit better.
Yeah, you know, you grow up. But ever since I was in high school, that was kind of a thing I realized, like, I want to go into art school. I didn't actually mold myself into being an animator, though, until midway through my first semester in art college. I was originally a graphic design major. One, I realized that graphic design was kind of boring. No offense, it's just boring to me.
Yeah, no, I can see what you mean. Yeah. Basically, that's a lot of designing static stuff. And as we were talking about, the difference between static art and moving pictures is something to take note of.
Yeah, and then, so in the middle of that, graphic design wasn't for me. And two, I realized, I'm in this school now, I could change my major.
Yeah, it's not like they can kick you out of the doors. You're already in there.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I called my mom, like, Ma, I'm changing my major to animation. And that was a you can't stop me moment. And, you know, I've always liked a lot of cartoons growing up. That was my thing growing up.
What were your favorites?
Oh, yes. I always credit Avatar: The Last Airbender as the main inspiration for me wanting to go into animation.
That is a great one.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I remember seeing it when it first came out, and it always kind of struck me as a very earnest attempt to take a lot of those tropes and anime styles from the East and westernize them a little bit, and yet stay true to them. Like, it was a very weird combination of things, and I appreciated what they tried to do.
Right, yeah. It ended up being like a really nice collaboration of and mixing of styles and ideas, and just even having the art book and like watching all the behind the scenes stuff, everything about it was so collaborative. And there was a point in also sometime when I was hanging out with my friends at that time that I realized, oh wow, I actually really enjoy collaboration. And part of it is because me, myself as an artist and as a person, I realized, like, I can't do much by myself.
Right. But your best work is kind of brought out when other people can kind of sharpen you up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And animation was kind of, I felt like the epitome of that. So I just wanted to try it out. If anything, the reason I was more into drawing than designing, for example. So animation kind of helped me get into that. And then also, I didn't have to finish my drawings. I hated finishing my drawings all the time. I like them sketchy. So animation, your drawings could be ugly as hell, but like you still pass as long as it moves
That's somebody else's job is to finish it up. Yeah, it just has to move, baby. Yeah. That skeleton just has to move.
And I thought that was really fun, really fascinating. I ended up really enjoying the people that were in my major and like finding inspiration from them and the people that also understood animation, even if they weren't in my major. So after college, I graduated from California College of Art and Design in Oakland. And I moved to LA for a job as an assistant animator at Bento Box. The same studio that does Bob's Burgers, but I was on another show at the time. And then in like closer to the tail end of my project, because in LA, if you're working in the industry, you're hired more on a project to project base, and you know, not on a. It's still
not on a you're hired at this studio basis.
Yeah, and
we're working on this show. We need this many animators. Now get the hell out. Thank you so much. Here's your paycheck.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that was a stressful time because closer to the tail end, I was like, oh God, I don't know what I'm gonna do after. A lot of the openings I saw as job descriptions were mostly storyboarding, and I felt like I was still shitty, kind of like a feeling. And then I saw Rooster Teeth had an opening. For a 2D animator, and I was like, this was okay, let's try it, because to be frank, I was a huge fan of Rooster Teeth before I even moved to LA, and Rooster Teeth was at that time a 5-year goal. Like, in 5 years, I want to get better at my animation. I want to learn 3D kind of a thing. I want to make sure I'm doing this. And then when that came up, I was like, let's try it out. And then I got the job.
So as it turns out, you skipped a couple of steps. But you know, that speaks volumes to the amount of preparation that you had already done up until that point, you know, because someone who hasn't necessarily gone through all the steps that you had gone through up until that point would not recognize the opportunity, would not have the confidence to go ahead and step into that plate. And then also the follow through to then see it on to its logical conclusion. What was your first job when you got to RT?
I was just an animator for X-Ray and Vav 2, and that was around, I think, a year and a half ago at this point.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I was an animator. It was kind of the first time from what I saw that Rooster Teeth Animation was hiring out-of-house people to grow the 2D team.
Right.
So I was one of those people.
And so what were your initial reactions upon entering this crazy environment that is Studio 5?
It was so different.
Yeah.
So
right back.
Yeah, a little. I came from okay, so straight up, my first animation job wasn't actually at Bento, but it was at Titmouse, New York, and I was just a cleanup artist for one of their shows, Turbo Fast.
Okay, now real quick, we are using a little bit of jargon. What is a cleanup artist for those who may not know?
So a cleanup artist basically takes the rough animation and they, let me try to put it into words. They essentially make it nice. Like, they're the people who put the final lines and final color into the animation.
Gotcha.
So in a pipeline, I guess it's kind of like storyboard artists, and then the animators take from the storyboard artists, animate on top of that. And then after that, it's the cleanup artists who take up what the animators did, which is very sketchy at times, and they clean them up essentially. And then after that, it goes into post. So that's what a cleanup artist does. It's kind of like it's a very entry level, is what I should say. In a lot of standard traditional studios, if you first get a job or you want to kind of work your way up, usually you start as a cleanup artist and then you go into animator.
And is that would be somebody who does a lot of in-between work?
That's interesting. It depends on the studio, because there are actually roles for in-betweeners as well.
Really?
So
in-betweeners being people who would animate in between the principal frames of emotion. So say, like, if I'm picking up this cup, 1, 2, 3, it would be the key frames of that animation, and then the in-betweeners would animate the in-between.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also, like, you know, you start as a cleanup artist, and then you go up to in-betweener, and then eventually go up to, like, animator. That was kind of the standard back in the day. Of going up this animation pipeline ladder.
Interesting.
So both Titmouse New York and Bento Box, from my experiences.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I tried to keep it in. I tried to keep it in so many times. You've been so good about saying Titmouse.
Yeah.
Eventually, it's gonna make me giggle. Please go on.
You gotta say it. It's a bird, by the way.
Yeah. That's my favorite part. It's an adorable little creature named the Titmouse, and yet it is what it is. We're 12.
We're 12. Both my experiences in those studios, which are industry standard studios, they're actually very cubicle-like. It was an office. You went into your cubicle and you did your job, and then the only times you really congregated are, you know, when you're taking breaks or when it's lunchtime. So those were the expectations, especially for me, because it's New York too, so there's that whole East Coast mindset.
Right, there's a lot of hustle in that bustle.
Oh God, yeah. I got used to it, which was really great, I guess. But oh boy, New York.
I mean, now the good news about that is it makes your day pass quickly.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, there's never a dull moment.
Yeah, like the commute, if anything, was an interesting way to, like, go about your day, kind of, or just be introspective. It ends up being kind of routine, so it ends up being a little nice. Right. But both of them were it felt very professional. Even if you goofed around, you still goofed around professionally. So going into Rooster Teeth and the setup where it was, which is, I think the term is like a farm,
Yeah, it's a lot more open. The desks are stacked up against each other. Everybody can see and interact and talk with each other.
Yeah.
As opposed to being walled and cubicled and rigid.
Already, that first impression, I was like, it was surprising. I knew Rooster Teeth itself was a place that fostered collaboration and creativity, but I guess being in it, that did take a bit of how to say it? It did take a bit of adapting experience.
Yeah, just getting used to.
Yeah, because it was like, oh man, I am out in the open. Like,
yeah, not only are you exposed, but you're also very exposed and vulnerable in that way. Because, I mean, like, you're sitting there working on a couple of art lines, and you're, so just plucking an example out of midair, because I'm not really an artist and I can just kind of go by. But I'd imagine if you're drawing a couple of lines and you don't really like the way that this one particular curve goes, but it's okay because the ending point lets you move on to where you need to and you'll fix it fucking later. If somebody comes along and then points out that one particular curve, that would annoy the shit out of me. It really would, because it's like, no, trust me, I know, okay? I know that line's a piece of shit. I'm going to fix that line. Just let me finish what I'm drawing on this leg right now, and then eventually I'm going to fix that belly line.
Yeah, so, and, like, on top of that, you know, like, if Jordan was giving us notes at our desks, everyone could hear it, and that was already like a, ooh, okay, well, like,
I know what you mean.
To this. Like, it does take a bit of a learning curve.
And then you hear other people's notes too, and you're like, should I be? I'm gonna put my extra big headphones on over my regular headphones.
Exactly. Oh my god. I was like, oh, maybe you shouldn't listen to this.
Yeah. You know, professional courtesy. Beep.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I love that stuff, though. But I mean, that is part of the part and parcel of being a part of an animation family. You know, when one person's mistake can save you from doing it yourself later on. Somebody's getting, you know, these couple of frames don't really line up here. You can fix this solution, and you happen to hear it 2 desks over. Oh, that kind of helps me do what I'm doing here. It's not exactly the same thing, but that's some good knowledge that I can use for what I'm doing. So I mean, like,
it's basically like the eavesdropping version of regular daily critique if we were all watching it together.
Exactly so. Exactly so.
Have like one headphone off.
Yeah, because there are going to be some positive things that you're going to pick up from anybody's mistakes, and some things that you may not necessarily want to listen to at the moment because you're either trying to focus or it. So, you know, I completely get it. It's something to get used to.
Yeah.
Was that kind of the biggest hurdle once you got there?
I think so. Well, how do I put it? So that was one. I think the second one was, in general, getting used to the expectations. So
that high level of quality we were talking about earlier.
Oh God, yeah. Like, you know, like I said, at Titmouse, I was just a cleanup artist. And Bento, I was labeled an assistant animator, but you know, in most I think in most and or some productions, a lot of the animation is taken overseas. But as an assistant animator, what I was doing was just addressing final notes, and addressing any fixes that came from overseas. So it was more of a checklist of things to do from the director. Fix this, fix that. His eye line is wrong. And there was only an occasion or two where I did get to animate something. But since I was only an assistant, you know, a lot of the more difficult assignments were given to higher regular animators or my supervising animator. So now that I was a full-fledged animator, 1, 2, immediately from the get-go, that it was, you know, you're straight into the fire. It felt like anyway, because they were like, our first assignment was really to animate half of an RTAA. At least the assets were made for us already, but you know, there was you have to do this in a creative way. And I was like, oh shit.
There are a couple of specifics to the way that things end up getting done on some of the 2D animation projects that like, especially if you're having to get used to somebody else's animation style because it needs to match exactly.
Yeah, and you know, that's actually the basis of TV animation too. There is the expectation, if you do want to get into TV animation, and the difference between TV and film is that with TV animation, you have to be flexible with your style and you have to adapt because there's already an existing style. And if you're an animator, you have to study that style and learn it. Whereas,
if you're an animator on a Gendy Tartakovsky show, then you have to be able to draw like Gendy Tartakovsky, and that requires a lot of flexibility on the part of an artist who may be a little bit more rounded in a lot of their lines.
Exactly. And then also on top of that, there's the animation style. So like, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender or Legend of Korra is more anime, so the style is a bit more, I guess, realistic, but at the same time, they do emphasize action and humor. Whereas how do you pronounce his last name?
Gendy Tartakovsky.
Gendy Tartakovsky, his stuff is pushed poses to push poses, and it could be fast and it could be really slow. It all depends on what he wants. So you have to be able to really recognize and notice those differences between the two, and then adapt to them. And that's how you have to show off your flexibility as an animator. Whereas I think for film, it's a little easier to get into the rhythm, in my opinion anyway. Not like I've ever worked on a film, but it's a little easier to get into the rhythm of what the director wants or what your supervisor wants, because it's the whole film follows it. It's not like you're going to like another TV production and then another TV production, another TV production.
Right. Unless you're working on a series of films, you're probably only going to have to do it once.
Yeah.
You know? And even then, with the way that a lot of movies are made now with computer animation and the ability to just take assets from one to the other, it can be done as easily as a television studio does it.
And like, I'm also thinking on top of how Pixar and Disney tend to have the same kind of, in my opinion, animation style, because their models end up following this like big eye, big head kind of style. It's just down to the art form. I feel like the only difference was really The Incredibles, because I saw some behind the scenes stuff for that, and Brad Bird had really interesting insights as to how characters should move. But from what I've seen in every other production, the animation follows a bit more organic, naturalistic arcs, like it's so beautiful kind of a thing. So that's just my opinion.
I really loved, and I'm gonna keep harping on it, even though it was a couple years old now. I love Paperman.
Oh my
God! Paperman was one of my favorite little hand-drawn segments that they have done in years. Because it has really great facial animation and also body animation, and it kind of breaks a couple of those little Disney tropes that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It's funny. I recently rewatched Paperman and I still cried. So that's actually
it's so good.
It's so good.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's a good combination of everything.
It is. It really, really is. And it's just such a heartwarming little story with no dialogue. Like, I love artsy little pieces like that.
Yeah.
Those have always been my favorites. There's one. Oh, and you're probably going to know it the instant that I say it. It was done by this guy, Sam Bozka, I think was his name. It's a Newgrounds animation. It was called There She Is. It was a series of 4.
The rabbit and the cat.
Yes.
Oh my God, that was the most amazing series of animations. I loved it.
So, when I watched the first video, it was new. And I lost it. Because, it was back in high school, and I kind of lost where I found it from originally, and I had no idea that it finished eventually one day. And so I came back to it at, like, 26, and I watched this fucking breakdown of all social norms, and I am just bawling my fucking eyes out, dude. Like, spoiler alert for the end of this fucking thing. There's one part where he looks up at the tree and it's got her little bow on it, and I'm just like, oh my God. And then it does the cut to his feet, and he's like starting to slowly back away and then turn around and run, and I'm like, no, you run, you fucking rabbit, you run so fast, you run to her. Oh my God.
I too was crying like a maniac.
What is it about animation that just hits you in such a stronger way than anything live action ever has been able to, as far as I'm concerned?
Oh, that's such a
Is it that combination of visual and audio elements? Like, yes, the music, it was swelling at that point, and those were exactly where you wanted the focus to be. It told you exactly the emotions that you needed to without giving you too much. You don't see the cat's face as he kind of goes through all those emotions. You see it in his feet. Like,
man,
it's crazy how animation is capable of doing that.
It's really interesting. I was actually thinking about that, or some kind of train of thought similar to that, because today I just saw La La Land.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet. Everybody
loves
is for lack of a better praise, singing its praises.
And nice, I get that. It was fascinating. If anything, I really liked the callback for La La Land it felt like classic cinema, where you really did have to concentrate on color cues, music cues, visual cues. Everything about it it felt like a homage to the way that old movies are like. Everything has symbolism. You really think about these things when you're watching the movie or when you're making the movie. And I think from my experience learning animation in my school, everything that we learned about animation was from classic movies. And it was about learning color, the importance of it, the importance of visual storytelling, the importance of literally every decision that you're making and how that can amplify your animation. And I feel like that much attention is put into animation plus more because you have to create this thing from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's probably why.
And because of the fact that you're making it in a much more collaborative type setting, when you are an actor, you are the only actor who is capable of expressing the emotion that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there isn't an Inside Out style like series of people working inside. I wish Amy Poehler was in my head pulling some gears. I would be a lot funnier in that case.
Good one.
But as it turns out, in animation, you have a team of people working on a singular character. And so the ideas of expressiveness can come through more when you have more brains working on what happiness looks like.
Yeah.
Exactly the arc of the eyebrows in order to get the most expression out of this one look. So that way you don't have to reuse that look a second time later.
Yes.
This look of worry is not the same as this look of worry is not the same as this look of worry. But they all have to say the same thing, just differently.
Yeah, and I think that kind of collaboration and the fact that there's been so many different people working with their own imagination and their own creativity is actually what ended up making my experience at RT Animation and with the 2D team and working with them in general actually that much better.
Really?
I felt like, to me, I can only take the show and the animation quality to up a certain point. It's actually literally the rest of my team that brings me even higher to that point. Because
that polishes that turd right up.
Yeah,
it's amazing how that happens.
Their ideas and their choices and decisions that they make with their animation, I'm lead, sure, whatever, but there isn't a production or there isn't a week or a month where I would turn to my animator and be like, hey, how'd you do that? Can you tell me what you were thinking when you're doing this? Yeah. And I would frame through it because some of the stuff that they do and it's so smart and it's so eloquent and it's just oh man, I can't believe I'm working with this group of people who are so creative and in so many ways creatively problem solving. If they don't have all the assets that they want or need, then they can find a way to make sure that they still get to point B very creatively. And it's just, it's incredible.
Do you have a specific example in mind? Just out of curiosity?
Okay, so I think I can think of this one. So for Camp Season 1, I believe it was...
Which, by the way, congratulations on Season 2.
Thanks.
I'm actually very excited. That's one of the few programs that I still keep up with.
Yeah.
I fucking love Camp so much.
Thanks. We're really excited to move on to Season 2.
Yeah, already bet.
Oh, man. So, Camp Season 1, I believe it was Episode 2. There's a part where the old weird wise man character, Quartermaster, is walking through the dark forest with our main character, Max. And Max is convinced that the Quartermaster is going to kill him.
Yes.
And there's this part closer to when Quartermaster just stops in front of the bushes and he goes, "We're here." And no, sorry, I don't even know if he says a line, but either way, he stops at the bushes and then he turns around. And in animation, so the way that we animate with Camp, X-Ray and Vav as well, we use puppets. So it's already these characters already are broken up into different parts of the body, and then we just manipulate there's certain points.
Each segment.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's more to that, but that's the general gist of it, is puppeting. And when we have puppets, we only have at most 8 views. And it's just, you know, front, side, 3/4 front, 3/4 back, whatever.
I'm about to say, it's very much like video game sprite-esque, where if you're doing a StarCraft mod, for example, the characters are only going to look this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way.
Exactly.
So that's the max that you're going to need.
Yeah. So, you know, characters turning have always been a problem, I guess, for us in production, at least for me anyway, because I'm like, oh man, I know I could have done that better. Like, oh man, I think
how do you do a 3-dimensional move on literally a 2-dimensional object?
And you can't, and you're not expected to redraw everything, because that's not economically smart. So one of our animators, Beth, she had that scene where Quartermaster turned, and it blew my mind, because I had to like frame through it, because the way that she did it looked so flawless. It's one of those things where if you don't know what you're looking for, then it's kind of hard to miss, because it's like, oh, he just turned. But to me, I was like, how the fuck did you do that? And
interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out later, because I don't know that I remember that minute of a detail. I'm gonna have to go and check that out.
It's like really those small things. Like, she turned his head first, and then the body, but then the leg would step up. It's those small things that like would make an animator go nuts.
You know what? I think now that you say the leg step around thing, I think I do kind of remember that, because it starts medium and then it goes to long shot, and you see his whole body turn the rest of the way. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I agree. I love smart solutions like that, because what probably ends up happening as far as the program is concerned is the program has him turn 3/4 of the way, and then you snap out to another view and you're able to turn the other 3/4 of the way. You know, it would be the same thing if you were trying to do a fight scene in a movie, and you show the front half of the animation here, and then you go to the other side of the shoulder and you show the person falling away. You know, it's that same kind of smart editing that you have to do in your own brain when you're animating, and that's ridiculously crazy to me.
That's why it's like, oh, everything about the animation process is basically cheating. You're cheating your brain to think that there's an illusion of something moving, and your brain just puts the pieces all together, and that's why it's like, oh man, this is so fascinating.
So has it ruined cartoons for you?
No, actually, I'm surprised it's not. If anything, maybe not ruined, but it definitely makes me more aware of which cartoons are, which cartoons have more production value.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. You can see the seams easier. Like, it may not necessarily make you appreciate it more or less. Yeah. But you can see the seams. Like, a bad cartoon can still have great animation. Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, oh wow, that's crazy. Like, oh boy. It's the just things, occasions like that happen just within my team. It's one of those things that I just go like, oh man, you guys are great. I'm taking this. Like, this is such a good idea. You guys are so good.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, that's what art is, though. Like, actual art is theft and adaptation. You know, it's recognizing that someone else's idea is so good that you have to incorporate it in your own work because it's going to make it better. You know, like you would not take it from somebody if it were not good. Right. Like, it's something that really said something to you, so then you're taking this and you're like, well, this is my spin on it, and it's so like collaborative. When, you watch a video on YouTube and you find a transition between two scenes that you like. Maybe it's a couple of circles that pop out and they rotate a little bit. And you download the thing and you watch it frame by frame and you go, oh, you son of a bitch, that's how you did that. It's actually really easy and simple and clever. It's manipulating these 5 shapes in this way, and then you do it, and suddenly you realize you just animated that transition that you love so much. But it's not exactly the same, because of, obviously, you couldn't make it exactly the same. It's made with your style. And that's kind of how you develop what is known as your style. It's the things that you like and the things that you take from other people, and then the way you can regurgitate them back out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so speaking of cartoons and animation in general, that leads nicely into the other half of what you do over there. You're not just behind the desk. You're behind the desk in another capacity on fan service.
Yeah.
Yeah, the anime podcast over there, fan service, which is one of my favorites while I was still over there. How is that coming? Have you heard any news?
We are done with season 1. And we're still in talks for what's going to happen for whatever's next. But for now, we are all still watching anime.
Awesome.
Anime does not end.
No, it never ever does.
It doesn't end.
So how was doing fan service? You guys did the first, what was it, 4 or 5 episodes as a pilot?
Yeah.
As like a pilot series?
Right.
Or...
The first 4 were pilots, and then we had a full season for first members. And that was actually really fun. I was only in 1 episode for the pilot, but I definitely was. I watched all of them and like was in the audience for some.
I'm about to say, and was in the audience for most of them. I mean, there's a reason why they included you in the main show when it came out. You know, as someone who was not in the foreground during the main production, how did talks get involving you more once the show came out?
Oh wow, that's pretty interesting. It's one of, I can't quite exactly say, because it was one of those moments where you're just so happy to be a part of it anyway that you're like,
right. You don't really care about the reasons why. It's like, I'm gonna do what? I get to talk about anime on a camera for people? This is great.
But I think one of the things that Cole, our producer, mentioned to me was that I was definitely a good contender for main cast because I was different. Just straight up, you know, we have Cole, Gray, Carrie, Miles, who have their shows that they watch.
So what you're saying is you're not a white girl.
1. 2, I mean, I also watch a lot more different stuff. Like, when I am a girl, I do watch a little bit more like girl-centric things. My taste in anime tends to be a lot more different than theirs. So automatically I bring that different perspective into the conversation. Even if we're watching the same shows, I might not necessarily be seeing the same things that they are. So.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. For example, the latest craze, Yuri on Ice. Yeah. Everyone is going nuts over this show, and I haven't seen a frame of it. And I probably really should. I'm gonna wait for the hype to die down.
Oh, okay. I was about to be like, you haven't seen anything, even from social media? That's crazy.
I have seen a couple of GIFs.
Okay.
I've seen about as much of that as I have of the one where girls battle in a pool with their boobs and butts.
Keijo, yes.
Yes, Keijo. Thank you. Yes, I've seen about as much of Yuri on Ice as I have of Keijo, and for different reasons, I will check them out at some point in the future.
Great.
I just finished Voltron season 2.
Oh my god, yeah, me too.
Oh my god, it's so good. I'm so glad that show's back on Netflix.
Yeah.
What a great time to be a fan of animation.
3. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it's interesting. So this is a slight tangent, but TV tropes. I love going on the TV trope site, and you can just spend hours on there. And one of the things that they had, you know, they listed out the actual, or they have actual pages for the ages of animation. So the Golden Age, the Renaissance, which was the Disney Renaissance, specifically when it was like Mulan, Hercules, around the time when animated movies start being really popular again. And then the early 2000s was considered like one of the darker ages of animation, because then you had like TV shows and movies that weren't doing very great.
Quite that great.
Yeah, they weren't that great. And then Avatar: The Last Airbender started the new, I don't know what they call it. I think platinum age of animation.
Right.
Where
just this
suddenly
new wave.
Yeah, new wave of high budget animation. And then of course
like Steven Universe and Adventure Time and
then on top
regular
of that,
show and
with and then you have films with, I think Tangled was another example of being in that era, because Tangled was one of the most expensive animated movies of all time. So just putting that up there, suddenly the quality of animation and what audiences expected of it just shot up, and that meant people had to spend more money to see it.
And not to mention everything that Adult Swim has done to bring back the animation to adults. Like an adult-centric animation has really taken off a lot, especially since now stuff like have you seen Harmon Quest on CISO.
Yeah, I heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically like
Dan
an
Harmon's
animated
like
version
D&D,
of
right?
the D&D show that y'all do. Yeah. And it's really neat to see all of these different animation shows take to the web, where it's much easier to measure how well they do.
Yeah.
It's much easier to sell out ads for them. It's much easier to keep up the up costs and all the things that make animation so preventative. Like it is really hard to get an animation series off the ground because it's expensive.
Yeah, and
it's fucking expensive and time consuming.
You have to sell it to a network. You're not. It's not the network. Man, how do you put it? And that means the network gets part of the attention and the profit as well. So that's just more money split up, and there's a lot of business about the industry that I think is also just as fascinating as the process itself. Like,
absolutely.
Oh man.
There are a lot of steps between sitting here on a Syntac and drawing for YouTube and actually getting something developed and made for television.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lot of in between there. And now with these online companies doing what they do, Amazon and Netflix and Hulu and CISO and Spitzo and Spotzo and yada, yada, yada. Right, absolutely. It's sort of becoming an online revolution for animation now. And I think that's really awesome.
It's very interesting to see and have discussions about what exactly the future of the industry is, especially with the advent of the internet. Just to me it ends up feeling a little uncertain, but also still kind of very fascinating to watch as it progresses.
Yeah. And it's fun to take that perspective of like being able to just step back and see the whole timeline and be like, okay, this is where we are along right now. And if animation has told us anything about this far, we should really cherish this time right now.
Yes.
Because in a few years, it's probably going to go away again. But for right now, we're in another golden age and enjoy the shit out of it. Hopefully, we can figure out some way to make sure it doesn't go away again.
Yeah.
But that's fortunately for people that are much smarter than we are. And instead, we get to just sit here and enjoy the whole process.
And also have more money.
Yeah, ain't that the ruddy truth? Speaking of, what are some of the more recent animes that you've fallen in love with? I know that you may not have necessarily had a bunch of opportunity to talk about it lately.
Oh, so specifically anime. So I am watching Blue Exorcist, the Kyoto Saga, because I do like that series. But the other series I'm a little bit more excited about, like seeing every week, is Interview with Monster Girls.
Ooh, I haven't heard of that one.
So it's on Crunchyroll, and Cole pitched it to me, and I fell in love with it. Cole pitches to me a lot of different shows, and I end up falling in love with them. So Cole gets credit.
Cole has what I would call excellent taste.
It's funny because he watches a lot of things. I'm talking about Cole now. He watches a lot of things, but when he's talking to a certain person, he kind of understands, like, oh, I think you'd like this from what I've seen. So it's like, oh, Cole, you know me. So Interview with Monster Girls, he was telling me, is actually really interesting. So it follows a biology high school teacher who just wants to have interviews with demi-humans, because in this world there are things called demi-humans who are actually like vampires and Dullahans and
all of
succubi.
the mythical creatures
that
we know and love.
They exist. They more exist because of a genetic mutation as opposed to like it being passed down. But it's like X-Men. But they exist and they're real, and they're here, and a lot of people still have misconceptions about them because of everything. So this biology high school teacher just really wants to have interviews with them and sit down with them so he can learn about them. It's part of his...
set the record straight.
Yeah, like it's part of his thesis, but also because
what could possibly go wrong there?
It's part of his college thesis, or his whatever thesis, but if anything, he's just more so very intrigued with what is actually the difference between regular humans and demi-humans. And then all of a sudden, in one day, he learns that there are 4 demi-humans in his school. And it's kind of a slice of life thing and more of a character exploration as he kind of befriends these demi-humans. Both there's a teacher and the rest of them are students, but he befriends them, and he learns about them, but also it's an interesting perspective on how their relationship grows and how they learn to trust him. And it sounds like a reverse harem, only he's not a scrub. He's actually like a muscular guy, and he's very considerate of others. And it's one of those like, oh, there's a reason why they like him and the reason why they trust him. So like on top of that, like the girls are really cute, and you learn so much just from like them telling their stories and what their life is, and you love each character. And there's only like 3 or 4 episodes out, but just from the first episode I had texted Cole and I was like, this show is adorable, I can't wait for more, I need there to be more.
That's my favorite feeling, though. That really is my favorite feeling, when you get to the end of what is available and you're like, fuck, what am I gonna, what? No!
Yeah,
I need more of that world! What is, no! Speaking of, when I texted you yesterday, day before, hell, I don't fucking remember now, you said the thing about Gallant, and I texted you the thing about Gallant.
Yeah.
I remembered that I hadn't watched the ending of it, and I went back and watched the ending of it, and realized that I'm really pissed off at ABC as much as I am at Fox for canceling everything that I know and love, because that show is amazing. Have you seen Gallivant?
I have. I marathoned it. I was embroidering, and it was one of those things that I just had on while I was marathoning, or while I was doing my thing. And by the end of it, I was just like, there are certain things that they said, and I would look up, and I would be like, they're so smart. Oh my god.
Right. I love that show. As someone who has a fucking master's degree in theater and did a ton of musicals, that show is literally the best thing ever. And I pray that somebody else picks that up.
Yeah, it boggles my mind because, I know a rough estimate or rough story about how TV production works, because it's they don't record it all at once like a film. It's more of a week-to-week kind of basis on certain occasions. And then in my mind, I'm like, wait, but how are they writing the songs at the same time while they're writing the script, and then they're recording it? And I'm like,
well,
wait.
The pedigree on that show is astounding.
Oh,
like,
true.
The composer and scoring artists are the composer and scoring artists who have done literally every Disney animation that we have ever loved in our lives ever.
Very true.
From fucking, like, where did that generation start? With Aladdin and
Little Mermaid, actually. I'm pretty sure Alan Menken did Little Mermaid from like 89.
Yeah, right about the 89 point to basically the end of the golden age of Disney. Like, he basically did all the scores for Aladdin and Little Mermaid and everything that you ever absolutely adored. So it makes total sense that going into this show all about Game of Thrones, the comedy musical, basically, it would be very easy to take that over-the-top, effervescent, overly happy style and just completely lampoon it every chance you get. Yeah. And that's what Gallivant does. And oh my God. So kind of getting back, I guess the way to tie it into our previous conversation would be something along the lines of actually using that movement, that visual storytelling, and also music, which is easier to do in musical theater than it is to do in live theater or in live action. And so theater is now over here to animation. Yeah. Theater kind of has that same emotional evocativity, if that's even a word, or if I'm just making it up.
I have to think about that, yeah.
Yeah, it has the same ability to evoke emotion that animation does, because you have those same musical swells, because you have those same easily identifiable, over-the-top animations, for lack of a better term. You know? So it's interesting to note those things. But anyway. So, as we are wont to do, we're getting towards the end of our hour here, and this has absolutely flown the fuck by.
Yeah, when I just looked at the time, I was like, wait, oh my God.
Yeah. And so before we get on out of here, we like to end every episode on an Inside the Actor Studio style questionnaire. But I've changed a little bit of the Proust personality questionnaire, and Yssa, it goes a little something like this. What is your favorite word?
That is an interesting question. There's like a difference between favorite word and a word that you end up using a lot. Can I say both?
Sure, absolutely.
So I like the word serendipitous just because it's fun to say.
Yeah.
And of course, the meaning of it is also very romantic. It's just something that you end up finding, and it's serendipitous. Like, oh, that's so nice. I think the word that I end up using a lot is necessarily.
Okay.
And a lot of it is always in terms of, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that, or I think that's, or it's just the idea of necessary or what is done. And it ends up going a lot with my job.
I can completely understand that.
Yeah, it's just you end up thinking a lot about what you have to do and just what is necessarily.
Did you necessarily have to sit here for 3 hours and work on these two fingers moving back and forth, or was there an easier way?
Yeah, it's like, well, necessarily. See, it comes out so easy.
And so, what is your least favorite word?
I have never thought of that.
What word that upon hearing it just makes you recoil in horror?
In lieu of our weekend. In lieu of our weekend, probably Nazi.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. That's totally fair right now. What sound or noise do you love?
What sound or noise do I love? Oh, wow. Man, these are questions that you have to like sit and think about.
That is the point, yes. And don't worry, they don't get any easier.
Damn it, Tim. What sound or noise do I love? A really good bass line.
Okay. And what sound do you hate?
Do I hate? There's a sound that makes me recoil out of like partial embarrassment. And it's the sound of mixing mac and cheese.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, when you get that cheese in and it melts and you're mixing it, that is the sound. Oh, no, Tim, don't do her.
It's so gamey. It's so gross. Like, that noise is the audio version of the word moist.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, like when most people hear the word moist, they imagine that sound in their heads, and that's what makes them go, So, we'll move swiftly along then to what hero or heroine do you identify with the most?
Ooh.
Super or non?
That's so interesting. I always liked Mulan.
Okay.
Mulan was the Disney Mulan,
of course.
A movie and the heroine as a whole, like, always great.
Yeah, no, Mulan is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I completely see it. What villain?
That I relate to the most.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, this is a tough one.
Mm-hmm. I know, there's a lot, aren't there?
There's so many. Oh, man. Now I have to like go down the list of villains that I liked, kind of a thing, and it's like, ooh,
right.
Which villains did I actually
and think
like?
which one is like you?
Yeah, and then that's another thing on top of that. Oh boy, ooh. Oh, you do not make this easy.
No, of course not. Are you kidding me? That's the whole point of this.
No.
I will go ahead and let you in on a little bit of the secret so that way it'll give you a chance to think. This whole questionnaire isn't about the answers. It's about how you think about the answers. That's what determines your personality types. You know, it's what tells me about you is the way that you consider all the variables. Are you a person who has these already thought out? You know, you have your favorite superhero and that's the one that you were going to be if you were absolutely ever going to get asked that question ever. Or are you the kind of person who takes their time and considers all the options because you have way more important things to worry about with your time other than filling it with what superhero would I be? You know what I mean? So every chance, every and ah, every I don't know yet tells something about your personality. And that's the whole point of this questionnaire. It's not about getting the answers right.
Right. It's about getting to them.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what villain do you identify with the most?
Okay, so there's something that that pops into my head thinking about that, and it's a villain that I ended up really liking a lot. Um, I don't know necessarily if I identified the most, but it was something that really resonated. And have you seen Luke Cage?
Yes.
So I don't remember her name, which sucks, but it is the congresswoman who is related to the cousin who owns the bar, who
Oh
owns the club.
God. She's also in a series of Unfortunate Events.
Yes, exactly.
And she plays well, I don't want to say the Wide Window is the episode she's in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I know the actress that you're talking about, and I forget her character, but I agree.
Like her whole
Great
story
character.
in the entire series, just oh my god, it's this person who ends up doing bad stuff because she wants to ultimately end up doing good. And it's that idea of, does the end justify the means? And eventually, do you lose yourself in that means when you try to get to the end? Like, oh boy,
just how much gray can you introduce into your world before you really do have to put on that black hat?
Yeah, like, oh god, that was such a compelling story. It's one of the things that resonated with me the most. I don't know necessarily.
It makes me really excited for the rest of the Netflix Marvel series.
Yeah.
And how they're gonna, when they're gonna tie it together to the TV stuff. Well, I guess Marvel's not really doing anything on TV. That's all DC. That's on the CW, right?
Yeah, the
CW, Flash and the Arrow and Supergirl. So it would be combining the Netflix stuff with the movie stuff, right?
Right, yeah. The movie stuff, on top of, they do have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And
I guess that is true. Yeah, they do have a TV presence.
And I know they were planning in their pipeline to do a movie related to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is with the Inhumans, but that was like all the way in 2019, so not actually sure.
You know what? I did hear about another Marvel series that is like, it's tangentially related. It's got people who clean up after
yes,
the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It has Vanessa Anne Hudgens in it.
Yes, that's it.
Somewhere they showed the pilot. Or it was screened somewhere. I was actually really excited for that. For the premise, one, also two, Vanessa Anne Hudgens, but also three, there was another person in the cast. I think was it the person who played Abed in Community? It was either him or someone else.
Oh shit, Danny Pudi.
Yeah, I think he's in that show. I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% either, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that was an exciting cast.
I know he's in the new DuckTales.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I know he's in the new DuckTales with David Tennant's son, and that shit's gonna be great.
Oh, when they did the reveal for David Tennant, I was like, oh, what? That was crazy.
I'm sorry. What a great use of a Scottish accent to give David Tennant Scrooge McDuck. That is so amazing. I never thought of that ever. He has the best Scottish accent in the world. Make him play the most Scottish duck that's ever been made. It's perfect.
Just why didn't anyone think of it before? Oh, wait.
Right? Fucking right? It would be like somebody saying, "Oh yeah, no, Sean Connery should have done it." Duh. Sean Connery should have done the damn thing. But unfortunately, the bill for that would have been way too big.
And David Tennant's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, getting back to the topic at hand, what would be your superpower? If you could choose one.
Man, every time this question comes up, I can never think of anything. Or it's always like I don't know.
Any of them? I'd just be lucky to have one.
Basically. Like, oh, I guess that would be nice.
Super niceness. The ability to know what would make anybody's day at any given moment in time.
To be frank, actually, that sounds like really good. It
does sound like a really great power.
Amazing, right?
Like if you want to talk about making the world a better place, knowing what would make somebody's day a lot better would probably be a damn good superpower.
Yeah, oh my god.
Now that I think about it. Huh. Anyway, what would be your super weakness?
I was like, this is on top of everything else that I think about myself. Oh man. Okay, so it has to be a super weakness, and I'm assuming I kind of want to make this a bit more fantastical and not actually relating to personal character traits.
Six one way, half a dozen another. However you would like to phrase it, dear. It's up to you. It is your super weakness.
Oh, okay. I know it. My super weakness is the cold. Freezing cold. There's a reason why I left Jersey.
I know exactly what you mean. In this last week where it's been going up and down and up and down and up and down, it is killing me.
Yeah, oh my god.
Oh my god. I've spent most of the weekend in a NyQuil-fueled coma.
You mentioned that how you took NyQuil last night, and I was just like,
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I had a really high fever most of yesterday, and I could not talk to save my life.
Oh,
you know, I'm on like 3 doses of NyQuil and 2 sets of cold and flu allergy packs. Just to get to this point, and I'm still hacking up at least one of my lungs.
Oh man, that sucks.
But it's okay, you're totally worth it. So what turns you on creatively? What gets your wheels going?
Ooh. Color.
When you sit down and it's the beginning of the day and you haven't even begun to think yet, what do you do to get that shit started?
Creative. Okay.
Yeah.
To get creative. Oh boy, that's an interesting question. Mostly because I feel like I've been operating under a just do it. I don't know if I necessarily have to like warm up, but like
hey, sheer force of will is definitely something to credit.
I don't know if just doing it makes me productive either, to be honest. Because the thing is, when you have a 10 to 7 job and you're trying to be creative, you kind of have to end up forcing that creativity out.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, there's that bit of a compromise there.
It's like the end of the toothpaste tube where you're having to squinch the tube in all different ways, and you're like, how can I squeeze out the last little bit of creativity from this tube, and we're done.
Yeah, and like, you know, on top of that, it's the morning, so if you're trying to be creative in the morning, that's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Oh god.
That's when you turn to K-pop.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I like to get my gears. I like to get my gears all oiled up. Actually, probably just by watching a bunch of YouTube videos. Just my day setup is literally go on YouTube and put on my queue of videos. Like, oh, this video is recommended to me. Let's put that on. And already just having either music or video on kind of gets me into the. All right, this is me trying to get into working.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And so, what turns you off?
Oh. Noises, probably. It's more so
like distractive noises,
yeah, like kind of distractions. Sometimes maybe if someone like taps my shoulder. There's a difference between like tapping my shoulder for like conversation, and then people there have been occasions where people would like, you know, actively target the back of my head or like shake my chair really aggressively, and those would be the moments that I would like. There's that hair thin line between snapping or between just being like, yes. Especially when you have your headphones in. Those are the things that kind of get me.
And you're like deep in a moment too.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to get back to that moment.
Yeah.
That you want to break them like the thread of concentration that they just snapped.
It's
in twain.
Oh god,
preferably.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I'd have to be like, yes. And there's like a difference between me going yes and me going yes.
What?
And they'd be like, oh hi. And I'd be like, oh hi. And that's like I end up having to get myself up that hill of being nice.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean.
Oh wait, you're just saying hi to me. Okay.
It's like a French press of coffee, just all that anger gets concentrated down on the bottom, and then you cut out that little bit of tumor later on.
Oh god, yeah.
So what other talent than the ones you've obviously been gifted with would you like to have?
Other talent that I would like to have. Oh. Man, that's so interesting because most of the time I end up thinking if other people have talents, it's like, oh, that's nice. That's such a nice part about them. I'm not a part of that, but that's so great. They're kind of like that.
That's never something I'd be able to do, but how great for them.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's part of that puzzle piece. We fit in that together.
Interesting.
Maybe the talent to do math in my head. there's some people who, oh man, a lot of my close friends, or a lot of people that I end up admiring a lot more, they tend to be a lot more gifted in that area.
Right.
They definitely worked a lot harder, or were specialized in that area of like actually doing math and logistics. So of course they can think of these things really quickly. Me, I'm just like, it's not. People are like, oh, I went to art school, I don't know math. But to me, I'm like, no, I just I just straight up didn't try.
Right. No, I hear you on that one. Trust me, math was always not my least good, like not the subject I did worst at, the subject I liked the least.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the reason why my grades were bad.
It was, oh man, growing up, this was a thing. Growing up, my mom would tell me that I'm similar to my dad, and that it's not that I wasn't bad at things, it was just that I could do better if I actually tried.
Right. No, I hear you on that one. Like, I hated doing homework. I hated doing homework because it was always such a colossal waste of time. I had so much other important shit to do than prove that I paid attention in class. Why can't you just take my word for it that I paid the fuck attention, because on the test I'm going to make an A?
Yeah.
So I don't need to do your spindly little homework and waste my time when I could be watching Power Rangers right now.
It was that. So like, there's that kind of guilt going through math when I wasn't doing very well, and most of the time it was, oh man, it was because I didn't try. Funny enough, I was doing terrible at one time, and my mom got my siblings to help basically tutor me, or to help like keep track and make me do extra work. And that was actually
make sure you were actually following through.
Yeah,
how about
exactly.
That novel concept?
Whoa! And that was the one time that I was like, oh, I get it, and then I did well, and I was like, like, it's not that, to me, it's not necessarily if people are really talented or do something that they're really good at. Mm-hmm. I always kind of follow this, 10% is talent. The rest of the 90% is hard work. Like, you have to put in that time and effort. So, I've been drawing for years, and I've been studying animation for 4 years, and that's what got me into here. And then, I play piano, and I'm okay at that, but it took me, I had a private teacher when I was 6, and I stopped when I was 14, but I kept playing after that. So it's like, building on top of that.
I did not know that. Here's a question related to that.
Yeah.
Not in the questionnaire. Do you hear music when you draw? Like, when you are going through the steps of a scene, because you already have this musical background, are you able to choreograph the scene, as it were? Is that something you consider?
That's actually something, that's an interesting point. I actually think I do tend to follow that. Like, there are certain things, if there's something is off to me and I'm looking at an animation, and if something is off to me, the way I feel like I can describe it is like if the rhythm is off.
Yeah, there's a musicality to the way the body is supposed to move, and something about it just innately feels off when you have that sense of the musicality of the flow of the body, but you can't put into words exactly what. So it's interesting. I never really thought about that, but a musical background would absolutely help bring that out a little bit.
Yeah, like animation, if you're animating too, a lot of them will say that animators are kind of just really introverted performers or really introverted actors, because you have to bring out these performances from these characters, but you also have to kind of finesse these performances. So, on top of me knowing piano and just kind of, I end up sometimes describing motion as like, like, things like that. You can only describe them through sounds, which I think a lot of animators end up doing as well. Like, they not only gesticulate with their bodies, but they also express it through mouth noises.
One of my favorite little tidbits that I learned while I was over there was that the fight between Crow and Winter could actually be put to the breakdown in Freebird.
Yes, yeah.
Blew me the fuck away. And it's one of those things where it totally makes sense. Fighting, more than almost any other method of human movement, really does have to have that musicality.
Yeah.
or else it doesn't work.
Yeah, it just
Period.
something is just off.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. Like I never really considered that until you just said you had the musical background, and it kind of helps a little bit. Interesting, huh? Noted. So, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self?
Ooh. Oh man! In high school, we had a creative writing class, and we had to creatively write this question. And I'm trying to think back to what I wrote, and I can't quite remember. I guess what I would say is just remember the world doesn't revolve around you.
You know what? Look, I'd say that for a 13-year-old, that is pretty damn good advice. Eventually, that view is going to change for a number of years.
Oh God, yeah.
I remember that asshole 18-year-old I was. Oh my God.
I'm still trying to. It's a process.
So, what is something that only you do?
Something that only I do.
Some little quirk or glitch that you think only you are capable of, or that you do on a daily habit.
Oh man. Oh no, what do I do? There's so many things. I feel like I'm a conglomeration of everything that has happened or everyone that has happened to me.
Okay.
So it's really hard to pinpoint what I do uniquely from everything, from all of that. Oh man. Tim, this is hard.
I know. That's the point. It's okay. A mirror can reflect many, many things and still be one singular mirror. It's quite all right.
What do I do? It's a quirk or a glitch.
Don't look at me. I don't know.
Wine. I think. Oh man, this is so.
You can make something up. We'll never know.
I think I have to start my day off with music. No matter what, go in the car. There's the radio. Always have to put it on. If I go in, sometimes I don't want to listen to like people talking. I just have to listen to someone to actual music. I think that's really.
No, that's fair. What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word? Definitely fuck.
See, I put that question right after the really hard one because usually it's nothing directed at me. This is all done on purpose, I assure
yeah,
you.
okay. I see how you did that.
Yeah. Where would you one day like to live if you have a choice?
I actually have two places in mind. I don't know if I would like to live here, but I think it would be an interesting challenge of character is to live in Japan. I think I feel like that's a lot on people's lists, but
I feel like you would do better there than I would because I'm 6 foot tall and I would just nail everything. Like every door frame going into somewhere, I'm done.
That's actually interesting. I think you would do better than me, in fact. But so Japan's one. Another place that I think I would be able to adapt to pretty well, but to me it's like a new place is Canada, actually.
Oh yeah. I feel like Canada would just be a delightful, slightly mapley scented version of America.
I visited Toronto once for like 3-4 days with my family, and that was a really fascinating experience, mostly just because everyone was really fucking nice, but like it was really clean and the roads were super wide, and I was like, wow, this is a nice place to be. So yeah.
It's okay. Enjoy it while you can. One of these days, they're going to build a wall against us and keep us the hell out. So, and speaking of one day, if you have a choice, my dear, final question for this evening. If you have a choice, how long would it take you to respawn after you died?
How long would it take?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, how long would it take? I'm like thinking of extremes. It's either like 5 seconds or I just have to wait a lifetime.
Yeah, to see what the future is like. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to stay in a coma for 100 years, come back and find out what 2120 is like?
Yeah, oh man. Ugh.
Fuck that, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Why limit yourself, you know?
Yeah, just, I think I would like, oh man, that's such an interesting.
Mm-hmm. I love these questions because they really do open up that kind of conversation of this is the way that I would like to interpret the events of the world. I don't know that I would necessarily like to have been there for them. I would like to read them in a book afterwards. And then you're going to go 500 years in the future. You know, it depends.
It's so interesting because, like, especially now how things are kind of ramping up in a lot of different aspects, not even just like American politics, but technology. I'm almost afraid of just how far technology is going to go 500 years in the future. If anything, I would like to time skip to post-Trump presidency to see if we'll be okay.
You know, I think that is wholly appropriate. Yeah. I love in Futurama to kind of put a nice little neat pin on this whole to the future discussion. By the year 3000, the Earth has basically been destroyed about 4 times over.
I think
like, in the course of 9 seasons, with 4 movies in the middle there, making up a couple of the seasons, they show, like, a couple of different alien invasions in, like, 2100 and 2500 and stuff like that. No, the world gets fucked a couple of times before it becomes okay again in the year 3000.
Yeah, to be honest, that's why I don't want to travel that far in the future, because I'm like, you know what, shit, I don't want to figure that out.
What if you mess around and you accidentally get in one of those mass extinction events instead of the one right after it?
Yeah, you know? It was just like, well, fuck, I might as well. I just want to see if we'll be okay after this.
Fair enough. Well, on that particular note, I think that this is a great place for us to round ourselves out. Yssa, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was super fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really glad.
You are very, very welcome. Before we get on out of here, is there anything you would like to plug?
No, I
said to plug.
That's a fucking plug.
Yeah. Do your fucking plugs, and then we'll get the hell out of here. That's what we do around here. Do your fucking plugs.
So, shout out to my team. February 18th, Rooster Teeth is dropping Sex Swing Season 1, so look out for that. And also, we talked about it a little bit, Camp Season 2 is also coming out this summer, so keep an eye on it. We'll be working really hard.
Yeah, Ruddy, well bet. And everything else coming out of RT Animation, it's going to be fantastic. By the way, I don't think we mentioned congrats on the new space.
Oh, thanks.
Again, we kind of rushed through so many different topics to hit all the tent posts, and unfortunately we weren't able to kind of dig into a lot of the deeper stuff. So that just means you'll have to come back on again in the future. You know what? That's all that means.
I would totally be okay with that.
A woman after my own heart. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. You'll be watching this on youtube.com/TimLeftwich. My name is Tim Leftwich. This has been Yssa Badiola. Did I get it?
Yes, you got it.
Yes. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Bye.